Hi, I'm John Tonello, a member of the Chef team. In this video, I'll show you how you can deploy Chef Workstation on your laptop or Workstation PC, create a Chef repo, a cookbook and a recipe that will use Chef to create a user on a target node, and create a Chef inspect profile to ensure my systems are in compliance. In this example, my workstation is a simple Ubuntu 2004 desktop, and my default user has sudo privileges. I start by downloading the latest Chef Workstation installer from Chef.io and using dpackage to install it. There are also installation packages for setting up Workstation on Windows and Mac workstations. After the installation, I run a simple chef version command to see the versions of all the tools that were just installed. In my home directory, I move into the .chef directory and copy the user.pem key from my Chef Automate server. My server's hostname is automate.chef.lab and the key is jtonello.pem, located in my Chef user home directory on the Chef Automate server. The key will establish the credentials Chef Workstation needs to communicate with my Chef infrastructure server. On my workstation, I run knife configure and init config to generate the credentials file. I answer each question, taking care to enter values that match my configuration. When I open the credentials file, my correct values are visible. I'm going to add a cookbook path entry that will point to where my cookbooks will be stored. To verify the credentials are correct, I run a knife SSL fetch command to grab the trusted certificate from my Chef Automate server. Knife SSL check verifies it's correct, and knife client list shows the connection is working. With Chef Workstation installed, I can now use Chef to generate a repository. This is a directory where all my Chef content will live. In this case, my repository is called Chef Repo. As you can see, generating a repo created the main directory and a number of subdirectories, including cookbooks, databags, and policy files. Inside the cookbooks directory is an example folder, but I'm going to generate my own cookbook called Create User. This is where my project files will live. When I change my Create User directory, I can see Chef automatically created a number of files and folders, including recipes. That folder contains a default RB file, but I'm going to create my own recipe called User. Chef will create the file and automatically place it in my Cookbooks Recipes folder. When I list the contents of the recipes folder, I can see the default RB and user RB files are there. Notice I didn't have to add the RB extension when generating my user recipe. To get a better look at this directory structure, I'm opening VS Code and my Chef repo folder. Now I can see my cookbooks and other directories. Inside the cookbooks directory is the Create User cookbook I just created, and inside this is a recipes folder and my recipes. I'm ready to go ahead and start writing my cookbook using the Chef language. Since I want to use the recipe for Linux and Windows targets, I'm starting by adding an if clause. Actions taken here will only apply to Windows machines. Next, I add the user resource and properties that define my user on Windows systems, including the home directory. Next, I add the user resource for my Linux nodes, again setting properties for the home directory, shell, and password. Here I'm using the shadow password as the value. Since I want this user to have sudo capabilities, I'm installing the sudo package using the short form version of the chef package resource. And finally, I'm using the chef sudo resource to assign sudo rights to my new user and set it up to not require a password when running the sudo command. I noticed that I forgot to reset the tab indentations for VS Code to 2 instead of 4 spaces. I could manually fix this, but instead I'll use chef cookstyle to check and automatically correct my code. I simply run cookstyle-a and provide the path to my recipe, and Chef automatically detects and fixes my spacing issue. Back in VS Code, I can see everything looks correct now. The default RB file is the default recipe for my cookbook. By including my user recipe here, I ensure it will get run when I assign this cookbook to nodes. In order to ensure any nodes that will have this cookbook applied will be in compliance, I'm adding an attributes file that's an important part of Chef compliance phase. I create a new attributes folder and create a default RB file. In it, I add several entries that essentially link this cookbook to an inspect profile I'll make a little later. The first line tells the reporter to send data to Chef Automate via Chef Server and to show results on the CLI. The profiles entry will match the title of the inspect profile I create. The compliance entry matches the admin user and profile. Finally, compliance phase is set to true. Before I take the next step, I run cookstyle against my attributes file to ensure my syntax is correct. I'm now ready to upload this cookbook to my Chef infrastructure server. I move back to my cookbooks directory and run knife cookbook upload create user, the name of my specific cookbook. The information in my credentials file enables this interaction between my workstation and the Automate server. When I now switch over to the Automate dashboard and navigate to my Chef server and organization, I can see my Create User cookbook is there. If I click on it, I can see all the files I just created, including my attributes file and my 2 recipes files. I'm now going to manually bootstrap 3 nodes, a Linux node, a Raspberry Pi 4, and a Windows machine. During this process, Chef Workstation will copy over credentials and tell the node to install the Chef infrastructure client if it's not already installed. First, the Ubuntu node. The knife bootstrap command is followed by the fully qualified domain name for the node, a -n followed by a short name I'm giving the node, and a -y to auto-confirm the bootstrap. Next, the Raspberry Pi. And finally, the Windows node. Notice I use the WinRM syntax instead of the default SSH to perform this task. When I run the knife node list command, my Chef infrastructure server reports back that my 3 nodes are connected and available. Now I can assign my create user cookbook to each node by using the knife node run list add command. I'll repeat this for each of my 3 nodes. When I switch over to the Chef Automate dashboard view, I can see that my nodes are visible along with all their information. To take advantage of Chef compliance, I'm now going to create an inspect profile and upload it to my Chef infrastructure server. I start by creating an API token under Settings, giving it the name Admin, and assigning the administrator policy to it. Before I leave, I'm copying the token to use in a later step. Back on my workstation, I change into my Chef repo directory and create a profiles directory, where I'll store all the profiles I create, including the one I'm about to make for my Create User project. I change into that directory and run an inspect init profile command, followed by the name of my profile. I'm purposely naming it to match the cookbook to keep things organized. As with the chef generate commands I ran earlier, chef inspect creates a directory structure and files for my profile. To keep things organized, I rename the profile control from default to user. Then I start writing my control. I use the control resource and call it create user. Set the impact at 1.0, which marks it critical. Add a title and description, and then use describe username exists with the value of should be true. This is a very basic control. Next, I edit the create user profiles inspect.yaml file, giving it a name and title. It's important that this title matches exactly what I put in my cookbook attributes file. I add my maintainer information and the version and save it before uploading it to my Chef infrastructure server. To do that, I allow Inspect to log into my Chef Automate server by issuing an Inspect Compliance login command with the URL of my server, a username that matches the name I gave the token, admin in this case, and then provide the admin API token I created and copied earlier. Now I can upload my profile using Inspect Compliance Upload Create User, which is the relative path to my profile's Create User folder. After a few moments, Inspect makes an archive of the profile and uploads it to Chef Automate. I can confirm that from the dashboard by clicking on the Compliance tab and the Profiles menu. Here's my profile with the title I gave it in the inspect.yaml file. When I click on it, I can see the details I set and expand the entry to see the control I wrote. With the cookbook, recipes, attributes, and profile all in place, I can see the Chef Compliance phase in action by simply running Chef Client on each of my nodes. There are many ways to do this, but for this example, I'm logging into each node and running Chef Client from the command line. I also executed Chef Client in PowerShell on my Windows node. After the Chef Client runs, I can see the CLI reporter showing each node is in compliance. In the Automate Dashboard Compliance tab, I can see my 3 nodes are compliant, meaning my Create User Cookbook has been applied and my user has been created. That's it. I've demonstrated how to set up Chef Workstation, connect it to my Chef Automate server, bootstrap nodes, create a cookbook and recipe, create an inspect profile, and confirm that everything is in compliance with Chef Compliance.